אדוני, נביע לצור אישנו, לכו נרננה לאדוני, נביע לצור אישנו, קדימה, לכו נרננה לאדוני, נביע לצור אישנו.
Welcome to a whole new cycle of studying the Torah together. I am Rebecca Levis. I'm coming to you from San Diego, and we're going to spend an entire year together studying the Torah. Now, this first teaching, called Bereshit, in the beginning, is, let me warn you, it's the longest one. Why? Well, it's here that we form the seed form for the rest of God's word. And then I'm going to develop those principles and patterns all the way through the 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I'm going to be sending out the days we don't meet in person. I'm going to be sending you these recorded teachings and the PowerPoints every Saturday morning, usually between 6 to 9, 6 to 8:30, somewhere like that on a Saturday morning. So let's get started today. I think that's everything. As I said, this is going to be probably an hour long today, and you might want to listen to it in 2 parts. So let's put on our Hebrew glasses and look at the scripture in its culture and context. So the very first portion of scripture that we're going to be studying today is in Genesis, or in Hebrew, it's Bereshit, and it means in the beginning. And we're going to be in chapters 1:1 through 6:8, and that's a lot to cover. That's why I said this first teaching is going to be a good hour. So I hope you'll hang in there with me and maybe, again, listen to this in 2 parts. So let me first tell you that the most important word that you're going to remember in this entire 5 books of Moses is the word life. Life, you could sum up the whole Bible in the word life. Physical life, spiritual life. And the second most important word in all of Scripture is distinctions. And this is how God creates things. He has 2 things working together as one to bring forth new life. And we're going to go over those in a minute. So this is the pattern, the foundational pattern of the Torah. So in the creation story, it's told twice. Have you noticed that? One in Genesis 1, and then it tells the story again in Genesis 2. And you might be saying, well, why? Why do they tell it twice? Well, it's because the rabbis believe that it is designed and determined in eternity past, outside of time, and then manifested and then retold in time. One is the spiritual telling of God's purpose and design, and then he manifests it and describes it in time when it's actually manifested. Now, when the Bible talks about God creating something out of nothing, well, we can look at that differently if you think about it through Hebrew eyes. Out of nothing just means out of what is unseen. In the beginning, it says that God created the heavens and the earth, and then many people say, oh, he created that ex nihilo. That is Latin, meaning out of nothing. But listen to what Colossians 1:16 says. For by him, they're talking about Jesus, the Messiah, all things were created that are in heaven and on earth. There it is, visible and invisible. So they first are manifested in heaven, in the unseen realm, the eternal, and then manifested in the visible. So this is how God created the universe, not out of nothing, but out of what is unseen. Can you see an atom? Everything you see around you is made out of something that you can't see. So if you can't see it, it's not there. That's where you get out of nothing. All right, so let's continue. Now, the rabbis agree that every theological doctrine, every principle, every law, every command is found in its seed form in the book of Genesis. So that's why it's so important to understand the DNA of your Bible. The DNA is right here in the book of Genesis. Everything you've ever wanted to know through time will have its seed form in this book. And it's developed and defined over time like a tree growing that's watered and fertilized. Thus, the tree of Israel that Rabbi Shaul or Paul talks about in the New Testament. So it begins here, back in the beginning. Now, how we see God's first creation will determine how we see God's second creation, which is his kingdom in you and I. So if we understand the principles of the first creation, then when we get to the New Testament, the creation that Jesus came to bring, which was peace in us through his Spirit, then you'll see the two mirror each other. That's why this is so important to understand the Torah. Okay, so each one builds on the previous account and paints this glorious picture of the one who was to come, and ultimately it would be realized in a seed form, or the seed of Abraham. And they're waiting for this seed of Abraham, which is the Messiah. So everything in the 5 books of Moses points to Jesus, the Messiah, or his Hebrew name, Yeshua. So you're going to hear me refer to him as Yeshua. Now we're going to be looking at all the covenants that are referred to. We aren't going to be going over in detail the Davidic covenant, but we will go over the Adamic covenant down here, which is in its seed form. Then that's where God created people. And then the Noahic covenant, where God's promises were given to Noah and Abraham. Then we're going to look at the Mosaic covenant, which is God's provision for instructions, how to live. That's what they call the law. Then the place would be the promised land. And then, of course, the first kingdom and king, the Davidic kingdom. Ultimately, it would show the promises of all of this personified in Jesus, the Messiah. And so we see the new covenant. Now, these covenants are called the covenants of redemption. God is going to create the universe, and he's going to create the earth, the heavens and the earth. Then man falls and he goes back to seek out and find his fallen creation. And so that's the redemption story. It's actually an accounting term. He's going to redeem or buy us back. And so that's what we're looking at in the big picture. So it's from everlasting to everlasting that we're going to be with the Lord. He created us in the unseen, manifested it in time through his covenants, and then we're going to ultimately spend time with him in eternity. And we're going to see that in the garden there's a tree, and the tree has to do with the first Adam. Then in the middle of time we see another tree, and then at the end of time we'll see the tree referred to in the book of Revelation, where we have the right to eat once again from that tree of life. So the whole Bible's all about the initial life, the life that's renewed and redeemed in the middle, and then the right to eat once again from the tree of life. Notice it's not the tree of love. Okay. Yes, God is love, he's grace, he's righteous, all those qualities of God. But it's not the tree of love. It's the tree of life. So that I'm going to beat that horse to death all the way through here. So I hope this is a big picture peek at the scriptures. Okay, so God had 3 commands when he created. Let be is the first one. So let's look at it. Genesis 1:1. In beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless, and you might read in your Bible, void. A better word to understand it in the Hebrew is chaotic. So without God moving, there's chaos. And boy, I had to pray before I started this today when I think about what's going on in the world right now in Israel. And God spoke to me when I prayed. He said, let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. And that's what we're doing here today. So it says, and darkness was over it says deep, but it's really the abyss. And the Spirit, I got a typo here, hovered over the face of the waters. Now, you see here two things happening. You see the Spirit hovering over water. And both of these working together are about to bring forth life. Two working together as one to bring forth something new. And this is what's happening. And God said, let be light, yehi or. And there was light, and it was so. And God saw that the light was good. And that word in Hebrew, here's your first Hebrew word I want you to write down in your favorite Hebrew words. By the way, let me say I have all 22 letters in a form that you can email me, and I will send you all of them, and you can put them in a 3-ring binder. And then when I come to one of these words, you can go to that word in its alphabetical order and write it down. What parashah what chapter and verse we were in. What does it mean? And what does it mean to you personally as you hear this story? So I'm going to give you more information at the end. And by the way, I hope you have seen our book, which is, hold on, it's up above me here, which is this one, A Year Through the Torah. And it is $38 on Amazon. So this is the book we use. Forgot to show you that at the beginning. So now I can shut the cabinets and continue. So he said, the light was good. Now, anytime in the scripture, here's the first principle I want you to write down. Anytime you see the word good, it means tov. Tov means complete, lacking nothing, ready to function in its design and purpose. Okay, good means complete. So, and God made distinctions. Wait, my Bible says, and God separated. Yes, but let me show you something. The word is, this is your second word, badal. He made distinctions between the light and the darkness. And again, you have two things working together to make one day. So you see the two working together to create something new. Okay, so distinction, badal, here it is. It means to separate. And I already have what good is. I wanted to put the Hebrew in there for you because I know some of you know Hebrew and you want to see the letters that I'm using. So God brought what? Order out of tohu vebohu, out of what? Chaos and formlessness and void. Now, wow, we can see that in our world today, can't we? Wherever God is present, there's order. So God brought order out of chaos. So this is a second principle. He always brings order. His presence brings order. And what is his presence? It's light. Now, you're going to see in the next couple slides that light is not the first thing that was created. Light was. And I'm going to go over that in just a minute. So God called this light day, and darkness he called night. And there was evening and morning, one new day. So see the two working together to make one day. And so here's the distinctions we see right away in the beginning. Heaven and earth, God's Spirit over the water, and darkness and light. Okay, so these are the distinctions that we see right away. His second and third commands are this. Number 2, be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so a tree has to be watered before it can be fruitful and produce new seed, right? So he produces fruit with seed in it. and that's the principle of how he creates. And that's exactly how he created his second creation, the kingdom on earth in you and me. Okay? He said, be fruitful and then multiply. Because if the seed is in us, then we can grow and are fertilized and watered, and we have seed in us and we multiply. So then he says, fill full the earth. And that's exactly what his spirit does in us. It fills us full. So God was making right away in the creation story many distinctions, right? God and creation, heavens and earth, water above and below, and then dry land and water, then seed and soil and male and female, and even in the animal realm and the plant life, and in the birds and the sea creatures. There were always two things working together as one. And I drew a little slide here just to show you something else that I thought was amazing that I saw the first time. Two opposites working as one. Okay, that word one is ichad in Hebrew. And this is what they pray daily in their prayers. The Lord thy God is ichad, one. So we see that these two work together as one. The sun and the moon, and it creates the day and the night. And then you have man and woman, who creates the man, the seed, and the woman, the soil of her womb. And so here's the distinctions we see again between the moon and the sun, men and women, and then animals, fish, fowl, and then the seed and the soil. So this is all a picture of the first creation. So there were four things: distinctions, two working as one, each separate in their design, and each had unique roles. Now, this is important. These are four principles to write down right away in creation. And did you notice something else? This is the first time I noticed this. The moon reflects the sun. The moon has no light of its own. It's dependent on the sun in order to start reflecting light. Interesting that the woman had no form until she was taken from the man, and then she reflects his image. But she's opposite him and distinct with a unique role, just like the moon has a role and the sun has a role. So see how important these four distinctions are? And it's going to be carried through in every story in the Bible. So I wanted you to see that two people were to rule over one kingdom. This was the Garden of Eden picture. Okay, in the beginning, they were to rule and reign as one. And then the fall and everything went downhill from there. So let's look at another principle that I'm going to be sharing with you all through these 5 books of Moses, and that is the creation pattern, which is a pattern of 7. And I'm going to be showing it to you in the pattern of the menorah. And so these are the 7 days of creation. Here is the things that happened on those 7 days. And I want to show you the middle one is always the one to keep your eye on. It's the one that's foundational. This middle position in this pattern always represents the Lord. Okay, in some way, some significant way. So look, light was present the first day, but the lights of the earth weren't created until what? The 4th day. So God had to establish some things first, create order, in order for then living things to begin. Okay, so on this side is the beginning of creation, and this is the same pattern as the 3 feasts and the pattern that I'll show you in what happened to our Messiah. He was crucified in the grave and rose. And then his second creation, God's kingdom on earth, reflected on this side. And it's called chiastic structure. And so I'm going to be going over that later. I'm not going to do it here. But then it says in the end, he finished and rested, right? This word finished is something important to look at. It's the word kala. And it's the same word for bride. When God finished, it says he rested. And the word rest is the word for Shabbat. And so that's very Hebrew. And it comes from the word to rest or to dwell, okay, to just stop. And it's also number 7, the word Sheva, and it means an oath. So think about it this way. When God created everything, that last day when it was all finished, his bride, then he rested, Sabbath, and it was an oath, the 7th day. Oath is promises. So see, this whole thing rests on God's promises, both Old Testament or First Testament and the New Testament. Both rest on promises. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to share all this with you. Now, it's a lot, I know, but you're going to have these for yourself to look at later. Okay, so let's continue. He saw the light was good, meaning complete. It's ready to function in its purpose. And then he said in Genesis 2:3, Bara Elohim la'asot. God created to do, God plus humanity, doing it together to form one plan. Okay? So again, we see that same thing. God and man working together to create one plan. There's only one plan. It's not a million plans. It's one plan. So let's look at the light. This first light that was hovering over the water, all through Scripture, I'm going to be referring to this from Mount Sinai to the New Testament. Light that was there in the beginning was Shekinah, or God's dwelling or presence. So God's presence is where he dwells, and it's called Shekinah or Shekinah. That's what we're going to see all through the 5 books of Moses. And then when you think of God's presence or Shekinah, another thing that I want you to think about is God's truth, called Emet. We get the word Amen or faithful from that. It means to rely upon, and it's also the word for a doorpost. And I'm going to tie that into the Passover later. Oh my goodness, these words are so good. You've got to get those packets of my favorite Hebrew words so that you can keep track of all this. Now, I know some of you are going, oh my gosh, Rebecca, this is way too much. Do I need to know all this? No, you're not going to remember all this, but what I'm giving you are some foundational principles. And then as we begin to tell all the rest of the accounts of the 5 books of Moses, you're going to remember these words are going to keep coming up by the 5th book. You're going to know this. Trust me. Okay, so when you think of God's light, it's his presence and his truth working together to bring God's plan or will or revelation. So see, again, the two, his presence and his truth, working together to bring God's will and revelation in us. So again, we're going to see that reflected in the New Testament when the Messiah steps on the scene and begins his ministry. That's why you have to see all this now. So man's earthly home, let's talk about that. He created 3 atmospheres, the sky, the water, and the dry land. Now, none of these had any purpose until when God filled each of them with life, not love, life. And this life was important because this life was supposed to function and sustain how this planet would work. Okay, that included people, animals, fowls, creeping things, plants, everything works in a special formula. It's the DNA of everything, just like we have a DNA, and it's our DNA that determines how we work. Same thing. So all were given life, and then all were given boundaries. Notice that border has the word order in it. So these boundaries created that order out of the chaos. Okay, the order established then physical laws here on earth. Gravity, physics, the tides, the winds, the seasons, the days, the months, everything was created in order with border. Now, God called them all at the very end Tov Meod, or very good. In other words, it's complete, just like we're made complete. And then he says, don't mess with it. Don't touch it. It's ready to function in its design and purpose. Now, this means God's will is being done, and it speaks of that completeness that I mentioned. So his first pattern of 7 had to do with an oath in the 7 days of creation. And notice something else very special the rabbis point out. The very first sentence of the Bible is, again, that pattern of 7 words. Here they are in Hebrew. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim va'et ha'eretz. And this is, notice, the beginning and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the beginning and the last of the Hebrew alphabet. And what did the Messiah say he was? I am the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega, the Aleph Tav. And it shows up twice in the beginning, because there's 2 beginnings. God's earth, where he established his physical earth, and then he shows up again in the New Testament. And it says in Revelation, I am the Aleph and the Tav, the Alpha and the Omega. So he shows up twice right here in the very first sentence of Scripture. And here's the Hebrew alphabet. Here's the Aleph, and here's the Tav. I am the beginning and the end, and everything in between is all about him. So heaven and the earth are the first 2 entities to reveal the pattern of unity that produces life. And so again, here it is in Hebrew, 7 is Sheva, meaning an oath. So God's light initiates, penetrates, and reveals truth or reality. So the menorah, did you know, was the only light in the tabernacle and the temple? So there's only one light, just as Jesus said, I am the light of the earth and so of the world. So you see, all these things are showing up in these initial patterns, and you'll see them unfold as we unroll the scroll. So God dwells in eternal light. What does that mean? Well, 1 John 1:5 says, God is light, and in him there's no darkness at all. In other words, in him everything is revealed. All truth, right there, 1 John 1:5. Look at 1 Timothy 6:16. He alone possesses immortality, which means exemption from death, and lives in where? In unapproachable light. In other words, in that unseen realm, who no man on earth has ever seen or can or is able to see. So see, again, this is what is manifested or seen is created in that unseen world, not out of nothing, but out of what is unseen. So we see it again in a couple scriptures there. So he says, let us make mankind in our image and likeness. So there's some people saying, oh, this is the Father, Son, and Spirit speaking, or others have said, well, this is God and the divine council that's referred to in Scripture, and those surrounding his throne. We'll get into that later, but let me just show you that God said, let us make mankind. Now let's look at the word mankind. It's the word Adam or Adam, and it comes from the verb meaning to be red or of the earth or the ground. And that is another word that's related to likeness. He's made in God's likeness. And that word, dama, means similar in action and to resemble. Oh my goodness. You see the word dama in here, the dalet and the mem, dalet, mem. So the first of the earth is Adam, and he resembled the likeness of the Godhead. Okay, then he made him what? Male and female. Look at the words here. The male in Hebrew, that word is zakar, and it means also to remember. Why? Because in the man is the seed, the DNA, and it remembers what it's supposed to do, right? And it goes and it seeks out a woman, and it's deposited, and then a female brings forth new seed. And look at what her name, female, nakav, means. A female is a nakav, and it means to bore a hole. Just like in the earth, if you're going to take a seed and you bore a hole in the adamah, you're going to get life. This is all about life. So I wanted to show you that in these Hebrew words right from the beginning. So what did he do? He created mankind in his image and his likeness, the first Adam. Okay, so he placed him in a garden, Gan Eden, okay, Garden of Eden. And here it is. You see Adam in the word ground, Adamah. So he breathed then what? Life. Did he breathe love into them? No, he breathed life. And then that life is going to be developed into the new creation, which holds love. Okay, so life, life, life. This is all about new life. So let us make man in our image. Now, image or likeness, here's another word for image. It's the word zelem, and it means shadow. Oh my gosh. We're made in his shadow. So, in other words, we want a relationship with the real God, and we shadow him. Now, when you shadow somebody at a job, what do? You follow them around all day, right? And this is exactly what that means, to be made in his image, is we're going to be Christ followers, because that's what it means to shadow him. Okay, so God breathed into man the breath of life, and he became a living soul. Here it is in Hebrew, nefesh chaim. And God planted the garden east of Eden and placed man in the garden, and he said, it's not what? Good. There's the word good again, tov, related to the creation. He's not complete. See, he says he's not good. So he's not complete and ready to function in his design and purpose. So what does he need? He needs a woman to do that. Two distinct things with unique designs, different roles to function together to bring forth new life. Do you see that? So she's to help him. He needs a woman suitable to help him. Help him what? Rule and reign over this new creation. And so what does that sound like? It's not good to be alone. Well, he was incomplete. And so God opened up his side, and out of man was formed the woman. Now look at the word man in Hebrew, ish, and the woman is isha. So it's the feminine form of a man. So see, opposites, two distinctions. And then she reflects him, but is different. And she helps him. So she's opposite him. Okay, nothing had been blessed until there was life. So this was day 4 with the creation of, after day 4, okay, when he made creeping things on day 5. Now, then that's when animation began, okay? Then man and woman were also blessed on the 6th day. So I should put after this day, and I'll correct that later because we have too much to go over. But it's after that God gave that light of day and night, and next came the creation of creeping things or animation. And then he made the animals and then man. And so he blessed those things that began to creep or move. And that's when he created living life, okay? The birds, the fish, the sea, and all of those things. He filled them full with life. Remember, I said they had no meaning until he filled them with life, not love, but life. God invented Adam to participate. He invited Adam to participate in creation. How? He said, name the animals. Well, okay, so they're all moving. He's watching them. And based on their action, their animation, he gave them a name. So this is how Hebrew works. Hebrew always starts with an action, even in its grammar. Every sentence starts with an action, and then the one creating the action comes after. And then it's given a name, and it becomes a noun. So a verb, then the one doing the action, and then it's given a name. And this is exactly how Adam was invited to participate in creation. He says, name the animals. And so he got to participate. Again, the two working together to give names. Okay, so he named them based on what they were doing. And that's the same way he made you and I. He said, be fruitful and create new life. And then I'll call you my sons and daughters because you're creating my life in others. So, but he looked around after he named them all, and then he saw, well, none were suitable or opposite him. He had no purpose. He saw the animals beginning to mate, and he said, well, where's mine? So I noticed this time for the first time something else interesting is that when he breathed life into them, where did it go? Into his lungs. And what are on each side? Now, I'm a cardiac nurse, and I've worked in ICU my whole career. So I know about the ribs, okay? And where air comes from in an ICU. You're put on a ventilator because that means life-sustaining ventilator. And there's 2 sets of 12 ribs. And they protect the vital organs, which is the heart and the lungs, okay? So again, the heart and lungs, two working together to give life. Isn't that interesting that there's 12 on each side? And I'm like, oh, that's like the 12 tribes on one side of the scripture and the 12 full of life in the disciples. And they protect God's life on earth. Oh my goodness, look at all this beauty here. Okay, so Adam and Eve then were given authority to rule over the creation, and I already went over that. God told them to till the garden. What does that mean? In Hebrew, it's this word, shamar. It means to guard and protect. So what their first job is to rule and reign, okay, and then guard or keep the garden. So just like we have a housekeeper and she rules over the dirt in our house and cleans it, or we have a gatekeeper, he guards the gate. So same thing when he says rule over, shamar, the garden, guard and protect that new life. So this is exactly what we're to do in the New Testament for spiritual life, but also for man's life. The life of babies, the life of the elderly. This is part of our job as we rule and reign as shadowing or following after the Messiah, is we are to protect our home. And this is exactly what we're seeing in the news right now as Israel, the tree of Israel. It's on their shield. You'll see the menorah, and then you'll see the trees. Isn't it interesting? There's 2 trees, the olive branches on each side. They are protecting and guarding their homeland. And that's exactly what they were designed to do in the beginning. Okay, so this all just follows all the way through, folks, and is true the same today. So did you know that the creation was the very first gospel message? Be fruitful, then multiply, create new disciples, and then fill the earth with God's spiritual seed. So like kind, producing like kind. The trees were to, and fruit were to produce more fruit with seed in them. And so this is exactly the principle of the seed. So God's perfect plan is the same from generation to generation. The first Adam and his bride, right, carrying the seed and soil. And then in the New Testament, Jesus and his Holy Spirit gave that seed to be in the soil of our heart as believers. And so there we go. Boom. The gospel message right there. So God made the first covenant with the two of them. Okay. And their first home was to have what everybody's home desires: security, sustenance, significance, satisfaction, and safety. So all these things are what Adam and Eve were to guard over and rule and reign together. This was the Adamic covenant. So then what happened? Well, the purpose of that Adamic covenant was to have intimacy and love with one another. There's where you see the two then functioning in love. And that's where love comes in. So first life, and then God breathes into them, and then they have love. So without God's life, there is no true love. So this is all the original DNA in the garden. So then God provided for them, and he said, reside with me. Here's your responsibilities. Here's your restrictions. Now rule and reign. So he provided that perfect atmosphere. And then there was this probation period. And then the proof of them actually following and obeying would be these things. Now write this down: freedom, fellowship, faithfully filling and fulfilling their purpose on earth. That would be proof. And it's the same today. God wants us and the whole world to live in freedom, in fellowship, faithfully protecting the earth, our home. And you can see it in all its forms and dysfunction, but this is the basic gospel message and God's plan. There's only one plan. So the blessings of this first covenant with Adam had 7 responsibilities and only 1 restriction: don't eat from that wrong tree. So we see 2 trees, and he gave us choices. Choose which one you'll serve, right? One has life, one means death. 2 distinctions right away. So what were the responsibilities? They were to abide with God, their creator, realize their value made in his image, multiply and be fruitful, then rule over, be satisfied and secured with the seed that he provided, the life. And this would foreshadow the Messiah, whom God would refer to as the seed of the woman. They were to till and guard this place, live in freedom and fellowship. But the one thing they weren't to do was eat from the tree of knowledge. Now, that word knowledge is yada, and yada means to experience something. So it's an experiential knowledge. It's not wisdom, and it appeals to our flesh. So everyone wants an experience. It's not necessarily God's wisdom. So man's flesh, that word yada, knowledge, is what we're going to see again, conflicting one another. God's wisdom, which means life, versus, okay, 2 distinctions, man's knowledge. And this is where the problem lies. Okay, so here we go, right in the beginning. So Adam was to guard, and then what was in the garden? Well, God says that Satan fell like lightning from heaven. We see that in Isaiah. And it says that it is Hasatan, or the Satan in Hebrew. That's his name, Hasatan. And it means adversary, accuser. His name means Satan, means to retard or hinder. It also means an obstruction in a well of water. So his job is to hinder, retard, and obstruct God's plan on earth. Okay, so most rabbis see Hasatan as the fallen angel. And Satan approached Eve. The woman can be seen as the one who what? Receives. So he's very cunning. It says he was cunning of all the animals. She receives the seed. So he knew he wasn't going to go to the one who initiates. He goes to the one who receives, the woman. And his strategy was a double punch. First, to create doubt, and second, he appealed to their pride. And so he goes to the woman and he gives her all this phony baloney. He adds to God's word and he removes some of its meaning. And he says, oh, God's withholding something from you. Don't you know when you do what I say, you're going to get this special knowledge and you'll be like God. Well, this is all the false religions of the earth. You know, it's a special enlightenment knowledge until you too can be like God. So it's right here in the beginning. So they listened to another voice, and instead of abiding with God, they were hiding from God. So again, here you see this separation, this distinction between abiding or hiding. And again, if you look at what's happening in the world, those that want to abide and have a clear conscience versus those who want to hide from God because they feel guilty. And this is exactly when I'm sharing the gospel with people. Those that have been hiding from God, when you reveal the love of God, then they can come out of hiding and get this new life. So this is the gospel message, intimacy with God. So shame and guilt were introduced, and they wore it like a clothing that would affect their very soul. The soul is the mind, will, intellect, emotion, and our senses. This is the flesh. The knowledge of man in the flesh will not abide with God. They want to hide from God. So after the fall, their default law of conscience, because when he removed his spirit, he said, the day you eat of it, you're going to die. How did they die? They died spiritually. He removed that Shekinah, his light in them. And once the light was gone, they could see they were naked. This is what happened. And so then the conscience came to life. And this conscience is what showed them their guilt and that they were naked. And so this drove them to the law of works, which is I try to correct a spiritual problem with man-made solutions. And it becomes a problem where man tries to solve this separation from God. He senses it. And today, nothing has changed. There's a void inside. The famous philosopher called it the void of every human soul. And it creates this restlessness and searching. And boy, we can see this. Everyone's searching for significance, safety, security, satisfaction, all the things in the original gospel garden message. Okay, so this is what's happening in our world. And then it drove them with guilt and shame to hide. And what did they do? Well, perhaps Satan even mocked them, because you'll always see a mocking spirit whenever God's glory is removed. And so with the removal of his presence, the spirit departed, and there were more distinctions. Instead of being covered with God's light and presence, they were naked. And instead of abiding, they were hiding. And instead of intimacy, they felt guilt and shame. So they covered up, I believe, with the fig leaves. And this is what I believe that first fruit was that they were eating. And very symbolic. You know, man likes to do the apple tree, and it was Eve's fault. But I have another take on that. I think the first thing they ate was figs. Figs is all through the scripture, very symbolic spiritually, not an apple. And they covered themselves with the fruit of that tree, the leaves, okay? And it couldn't heal them. Remember, it says he gave them the leaves for healing? Well, these heels could only hide them, hide their guilt and shame. And so that's also something that happened. So he used an animal. He killed this first innocent animal right there in the garden. This is the picture right here of the gospel message. An innocent would have to die for the sake of covering the guilty. And this was the first distinction of life versus death right there in the garden. And so in doing this, Adonai acted as their, we're going to go into this in these 5 books, the whole priesthood and the law and Sinai and all that. The first mediator was God himself. And we're going to see it later play out with the killing of the goats later in this Levitical priesthood. And so this was to cover their sin. And so they were distant and lonely instead of being brought near and being intimate. And this is what the priesthood would do. So distinctions: intimacy versus loneliness, distance versus being brought near. Wow, this is the whole picture in the garden. So in Genesis 3:15, God said to Hasatan, I'm going to put trouble or enmity. This is the word Ya'av, and it means, it's where they get the word oive. Oyev is trouble. This is that word. I'm going to put trouble between you and the woman, between your seed, Satan, and her seed. He, the Messiah, the seed of Abraham, will strike your head, meaning what you say, and you will strike his what? Heel. Now, this is a grammatical hint right here in the beginning. Let me take a little side here just to give you a hint grammatically. The Messiah is going to strike the heel. So, look, Satan is going to strike the heel. Now, see, it says the Messiah is going to strike your head, where the words are coming from, but you will strike what? The Messiah's heel. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so the word for heel is the same word, akav, which means where you get the name of Jacob, Yaakov. So Satan is going to strike Jacob's seed. And this is exactly what we see going on in the news. He's striking the heel right here. Yaakov, Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, so in other words, there's going to be a conflict between those two. The seed of the woman, which will be Israel and all those grafted in believers, you and I, and the serpent's seed, which will strike the heel. Yaakov. All right. And there's another distinction. God's kingdom, okay, Israel and believers, and man's kingdom. And we see it in the United States right now, going on, the conflict of the two seeds. Not saying that those that are for either side are bad people, but there's a spirit going on. This is the spiritual battle for the heavenlies that is going on there. It says we don't battle against flesh and blood, but against rulers and authorities and powers of evil in this world, and battles in the heavenly realm. So this is what's going on, what we see on every channel right now. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is happening when we start this new principle of the seed. So I put this slide in here so you can look at some more things about Jacob. We're going to go into this later in some detail, but I want to point out that at the very end of these, the book of Genesis, remember I said it's the seed form? Look at what we see at the very end in Genesis 49. And they're speaking of the God of Jacob. There it is again, the woman's seed. But his bow, okay, but his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of who? Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone, okay, of Israel. Okay, he's speaking about Judah. Okay, so he's speaking about the stone, and in this word stone, we see the word son. See this? B and the N. It's the word ben. So this stone even has the word for son in it, or seed, or descendant. Having a son builds your home. So right here, talking about the Messiah, right? The God of Jacob is mentioned, the woman's seed. From him will come a shepherd, and he's going to be the stone of Israel. So right here, Oh my goodness, look at these beautiful words. All right, so you can have these slides to write down all your words later. So they ate from the wrong tree. They were kicked out in exile. And he says, now you're going to have to work for your food. Look at the word for work. It's lacham. Lacham is the same word for bread, lechem. You're going to have to work for your food. Okay, so from the garden, we're going to trace the two seed lines. And the seed of the serpent, Hasatan, and the seed of the woman, Hamashiach, or the Messiah. All right, the distinctions will be this: those that hear and respond to the words of the Messiah versus those that refuse and reject God's words or voice. So there's the distinctions, and there's our world today. Okay, so let's look at 3 related words, and then we're almost done. Hang in there. I know it's been over an hour, but like I said, listen in 2 portions. Okay, I want to show you something. What did he place to guard the garden at the gate? Remember the gatekeeper? He placed 2 cherubim. Okay, the cherubim is the word karav, which means to draw near. So he brought these cherubs to protect the gate. They were to draw near and protect the gate. Okay, they held flaming swords, and the garden was to the east. And I want to show you how these 3 words all sound the same. The sword, to come near, and that came from the east. Look, karav is here, karav, and then charav is the sword, and then karav is to come near, and it's where we get the word sacrifice, korban, and then it comes from the east, and it's the word kadem, and it means to precede in time, initial, contact, or ancient. So from the east, he puts him in this place, ancient time. He puts him in this place, and he puts 2 cherubim to draw near, and it has a sword. I'm going to tie all this together in the New Testament, but I just had to show you the beauty of this language. And in the spring, I'm going to be teaching a new class. So when you see the word east, write this down. This is another principle. When you see the word east in the Bible or something coming from the east, it's always in relationship to a wind or to God's spirit. So write down east and put equals wind and spirit. And you see it all through the Psalms and into the prophets. And the word east is coupled with wind or ruach or spirit. Okay, so halfway through Ezekiel, he begins describing the temple, and the word east is coupled with where God's presence comes from. So see, the wind and the east are always together. And so this is where Jesus is going to walk through into the city of Jerusalem through the east gate. Oh my goodness. So that's it, I think. Let's look at the last distinctions here between God's authority and man's control. One is God-given, one is man-driven. One brings order, one has disorder. Look at our world. One brings freedom, the other's bondage. The people don't want to be in bondage right now. The Arab worlds don't want to be in bondage. The people in Gaza don't want to be in bondage, but they're under bondage of the terrorist, that spirit of Hasatan. Okay, one leads, but the other dominates. One is responsive to God, the other rebels and fights against God and God's people. One brings and promotes life, the other brings and promotes death. This is the spiritual battle we see going on in our world today. And then I show you how when the first man comes on the scene, Cain, he kills and murders his brother. It's the same spirit and the 2 seed lines that we're going to be following from Cain all the way through, and then through other people in the Bible. But I want to show you this. Cain is a man of the field, it says. Now, write this down, whenever you see the field, that means the world. So it says Cain was a man of the field. Okay. And he takes his brother out into the field to create murder. And so again, you'll see the pattern. And so what did Cain have in the field? Arrogance, apathy, and anger. And this is the first murder. This is what we see going on in our culture today. Arrogance towards their guilt, apathy towards God, and anger towards anything that reflects God's goodness. And they're disobedient toward God's way, have a disregard for God's word. We've taken it out of our schools and we want it out of our culture. We want it out of the government, and defiance against God's will. So this is that first spiritual conflict, starting with the very first two brothers. And we see right now two brothers of Abraham fighting. So this is where it began, folks, and this is important to see and understand. So the spirit of Cain, the seed of the serpent, has a spirit that resists confession, refuses correction, and rejects that intimacy or communion. So this kind of spirit is always going to reproduce itself, and the people are then going to be filled with resentment and rebellion. That spirit is multiplied and fills the earth with more unrighteous seed. And then God saw that what? Man's thoughts, the seed that's produced, were only evil all the time, and he regretted. Naham, he changed his mind that he made them. And then came the flood. So here's the distinctions. I'm going to just let you see these seeds once again. We're going to follow Cain through all the things that happens in his seed's life, and then the seed that comes and replaces Abel, which is Shem, after Noah. And then we see Shem, and he's going to reflect the seed of the woman. And this is what we're going to follow: stability, obedience, thankfulness, kindness, peacemakers, wholeness, and then what happens to the other seed. And I'm going to end. Wow. You see how important to understand the beginning? Because it says God knows the end out of the beginning. Not the end from the beginning, but that word can be translated and should be not the end from the beginning. He knows the end out of the beginning, because why? That's where the seed began this. So Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you next time on Sparky's Torah Time. Bye-bye.